So let me first start by welcoming everyone. I appreciate you all being here. My name is Denise Quayle, and I'm the Managing Director at Kids in Crisis. And today's program is the Helping Kids Thrive program, a wellness series from Kids in Crisis. And our discussion today is on managing back to school anxiety. We'll be recording today's program, and it will be on the KIC website for future reference if anybody wants to see it again. And please put any of your questions or comments into the chat box. I'll be monitoring that. I'll be the only one that sees it for confidentiality. No one else will see who's submitting a question. And let me start by introducing our panel. I'll do a quick introduction because our program's only an hour today. Our first person is Joanne Mortimer. Joanne is a licensed mental health counselor and practices biofeedback and CBT for anxiety, pain, and stress-related disorders. Joanne is on the board of Kids in Crisis and heads up our program committee. And now Polly Morrow. Polly is a business professional and a parent of two teens who are very active in the Kids in Crisis Lighthouse Program. Polly has firsthand experience raising kids struggling with anxiety. And right over here in the other corner is Carol Malstedt. Carol is an MSW and a psychologist in private practice, working with children and youth dealing with anxiety and depression. She's also the chairperson of Compassionate Ridgefield and Project Resilience, bringing initiatives, speakers, and programs to her community to help young people and parents and families flourish. And right in the middle for me is Yvonne Lerner. Yvonne is a licensed professional counselor and a Kids in Crisis Teen Talk counselor at Ridgefield High School. She also has a private practice, and Yvonne works with students, family, and school personnel to help them manage mental health issues that may arise on campus. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to start with a few questions we have in the chat. And let me start with Joanne. Joanne, why don't you let us know a little bit about how would I deal with my child? How would I, no, wait a second. I'm just combining questions here. How might a parent use CBT for anxiety or pain and stress-related disorders?
Okay, so CBT is cognitive behavior therapy, and it has tremendous amount of research behind it. It's actually called the gold star treatment for anxiety. And it's a combination of talk therapy and some exercises, really handwritten exercises that help us look at the thoughts we have that are usually exaggerated, negative, catastrophic, we run all kinds of scenarios in our heads, and take a look at them and try to challenge the validity of them. Do they make sense? Are they real? Are they truthful? Are they factual? And really look at what those thoughts mean. And then develop a new way that's much more reality-based and much more solution-focused and really makes sense, a new healthy way, a healthy thought to replace those anxiety thoughts. It's a therapy that takes time and involvement with each person to think about and identify what their thoughts are, to get into that process. What are you thinking when you get anxious? What were the thoughts you had right before that? So you have to connect with identifying with your therapist what those thoughts were, and then talking through the validity of them and developing the new thoughts. If I were going to give a parent, and I give this little exercise to everyone because it's so helpful and you can do it in the moment. So just quickly, if you make 3 columns, so if anybody has paper, make 3 columns right now on your paper. And the first column head would be automatic anxiety thoughts. So you're going to put all of the thoughts that come into your head. So for instance, your child says, oh, what if I trip and fall when I'm walking into the class and everybody makes fun of me, and then it's going to be embarrassing. And in their minds, all they think about is, falling over the edge of the cliff. They're never going to recover from that. Because remember, kids that have anxiety, all of us that have anxiety, happen to be very creative thinkers. We have good imaginations. So our imagination can go out there and come up with a lot of things. Column 2 is labeled truths, facts, and validation. So in this column, you're going to say, is it true that the likelihood of my fall, that I'm going to fall, have I ever fallen before? Right? What is the truth? Is it true that that happens? Is it true? Is it a fact that I cannot cope with this feeling or whatever is coming up? Is it valid? Has, like, for instance, I'm going to fail the test, or my teachers don't think I'm a, whatever it is, my teachers don't think I'm a good student. Has there been any validation of that? Has anyone ever said, yes, you're not good at that? Or has there been validation of the opposite? You've heard a lot of people say that you're actually a very good student or very good friend. And then based on what you have in column 2, we go to column 3, which is new, healthy, reality-based thoughts, solution-focused thoughts. So in column 3, you help your child identify, or even for yourself, right, to identify not what column 1, what my automatic anxiety thoughts are, but based on column 2, the thought, the reality, and the facts, what new things can I say to myself that are really more true? And so every time those automatic thoughts come up, we immediately hit it with the other more reality-based factual thoughts. So it's not necessarily that those automatic thoughts are never going to come up again, but we have really kind of processed through and thought about them a little bit more clearly. And scientifically, it's kind of come through our executive functioning, and we've been able to write down, and we learn differently in that process, that there's a new way to look at this. And I have new thoughts about the same situation. It's extraordinarily empowering.
Very helpful tool, Joanne. Thank you. Thank you. When I think about what you're saying in terms of identifying issues, let me ask you this, Carol. How do you think if a parent is trying to figure out, is my child really depressed, or is this just a mood? And should I get help, or should I not manage it on my own?
That's a really great question. So the first piece of that is that every parent has to know their own child and also feel empowered to know their own child. So, depression is both a mood and a disorder. On any given day, we're all a little more depressed at 1 hour than we are at another hour. Like my low point in the day is 4 o'clock, right? So my mood dips at 4 o'clock. So it's sort of a depressive state. But depression is a clinical disorder, and there are numerous symptoms. And I think of them as the guardrails on a highway, right? So you want to think about what we call vegetative signs. So is your child eating? Are they sleeping? Are they able to exercise and do the things that normally bring them pleasure? Are they socializing? Are they doing the things that they've always loved to do? How are they interacting with you? They're teenagers, so are they more or less polite and respectful, at least when you ask questions and ask them to come to the table? And if any of these signposts on the guardrails are off for 2 weeks or more, you want to think about perhaps getting help, especially given what we've all been through for the past year. So some kids who have been sort of subclinically depressed, meaning they're struggling, they're what we call languishing. They're not really depressed, but they're not really thriving either. Those kids, and adults, by the way, are all at risk, because now we're looking at, another year, hopefully 6 months, but 6 months to a year of more stress and anxiety about COVID. So you want to be extra vigilant about getting help sooner rather than later. Depression is highly treatable. I could spend a whole webinar on that, but suffices to say it's highly treatable. The other thing you want to watch out for is suicidality. I'm just going to throw that in here early on in case there are questions out there in the audience. And there are many, many risk factors and many signs and symptoms of suicide, and sometimes suicides occur when there are no obvious symptoms. But the ones you really want to look for are kids who have suffered major losses. So they've flunked a grade and they're being held back, or they've broken up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or there's a parental divorce. So major crises. And then you want to look for feelings of hopelessness. I'm never going to feel better. Life isn't worth living. They're giving away possessions. They're writing their friends notes. You do want to monitor your kids' social media on some level and know how they're doing. But if you sense that your child is feeling that hopeless, you want to get help immediately. Don't wait.
Mm,
Does
very
that answer
helpful.
your question, Denise? Okay.
Yeah, very helpful. Very helpful.
I mean, we could spend hours on depression, but I try to put it in a little capsule.
Absolutely. No, very helpful, Carol. I'm just going to flip to the parent because there's a couple of parent things, but as a parent, Polly, and your perspective on what's the right balance of challenging your kids to do their best in school without putting more pressure on them, already the pressure that they may be feeling when you're worried
Yeah,
about all these other things.
it's a really good question. And it's, every day you have to sense, what's really the right thing, how hard to push. I have one child that I need to talk off the cliff because they push themselves so hard. And another child that just day to day getting to school and being there has been extremely challenging. So I need to, support them and make them know that you do your best. You don't worry about the grades, just do what you need to get done, and don't let the anxiety hold you back. And sometimes it's, and at one point, this kid would every Sunday night sick to the stomach. Oh, I don't feel good. And that most of that's psychological. It just happens that they're bearing it in their gut. So trying to help them get through the anxiety. And we did have to get some longer term help. I'd say my kids have always had counselors because separation anxiety at a young age. And I've always felt it's really helpful for them to have somebody else to talk to other than a parent so that they can really feel open and confide. So we've always had that help, but needed more help, and fortunately got it and has turned a corner. But we're about to start high school, so it's a whole new thing. And I know there's going to be a lot of anxiety about that too. So we deal with it one day at a time though, and just pray and support and do the best we can. But he's excited about it, which is really great. Very excited about high school. So that's knock on wood. That's a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. Transitions can be challenging for anxiety for sure. Yvonne, maybe you could weigh in on what could parents do to be supportive with that, preparing their kids to go back to school, whether it's high school, middle school.
Yeah, I guess I would just start by recommending that parents always acknowledge the challenge of going back to school, acknowledge that this is difficult, because I think a lot of what I hear frequently is that my parents don't understand. Like, my parents don't remember what it's like to be my age. And so validating that what they're going through is super real and the anxiety that they're feeling is real, I think is a really good place to start, because I think that opens the door for your child to continue to go to you because they feel validated. And then I guess listening without judgment, I guess kind of that's the therapist role in a way too, but I would recommend it for a parent as well, because you want your kid to be able to talk to you, and they don't want to feel judged. And so that's another thing that I think of in terms of being supportive. I think something that I hear a lot as well is fear of the response that they're going to get from their parent. If they go to their parent for help, they're maybe a little bit fearful about what kind of feedback they're going to get. Are they going to get advice? Are they going to get reprimanded? Where in reality, they just want to get it off their chest. And so I think just being aware of the type of response and kind of safe feeling that you're giving them can be really, really effective, because I think safety eases a little bit of that on edge feeling. But yeah, being supportive, I think those are probably the top things I would think of in terms of being supportive during this time.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to weigh in on what to do in the moment? Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, so it's funny that I appreciate what Yvonne was saying, and I saw some middle schoolers just this past week who were getting anxious about the opening of school. And there are some things I think that can be really, really helpful. One is to take your kids to school and let them walk the building, walk their schedule as many times as necessary until they feel like they know how to get from class to class. It just eliminates a whole baggage of anxiety before school starts. And the other, this is for the kids who have been more reclusive during COVID, is to schedule play dates. Like get them connecting with their friends before they have to go back to school. As hard as that might be for the kid, for the more shy or the more socially anxious kid, I would, as much as possible, encourage them to call them up, meet them in town for ice cream, go to a movie, if that's safe, but do whatever they can so that they walk into the building feeling like there's a few friendly faces that will smile at them. There's really some practical things people can do. In some schools, if a kid is really uncomfortable at lunch in the cafeteria, they can go to the library. And it's good for kids to know that's permissible. In some schools, it's not allowed, but if that, and I don't know where the school districts, our audience is from, but if that's allowed, kids should also be told that. Like if you went to the lunchroom and there's no place to sit, go do your homework in the library or go sit in a hallway or go sit in an empty classroom. Like you don't have to sit there and like feel mortified. Anyway, my 2 cents.
Very helpful. Go ahead, Joanne.
Yeah, and to your point, Denise, about transitions and how hard it is for, especially kids with anxiety to make transitions. And especially this year, I think with there being so much unpredictability and fear around sickness and COVID. While none of us, as those of you that are parents, want to necessarily give up the last 2 weeks of summer, I think to some degree, starting to set a routine and starting to set, things that kids, especially kids that are anxious, can rely on, that are predictable. They have a routine. They know at a certain time they're going to bed, maybe beginning to have reading time or some, kind of narrowing, not all at once, but just gently kind of narrowing in and creating routine in this last period of time, not only creates a little easier transition to the timing that they're going to be getting up and, on a more routine schedule, but also gives them an anchor. It feels like there's something that's going to be predictable in this period of time where, some things are going to be not predictable, and it's comforting, it's settling.
I couldn't agree with you more, Joanne. And since I talked about depression a second ago, I'm just going to hijack this conversation to talk about sleep, because I'm a huge believer that sleep is critical for mood. And it's really important for teens, especially, to go to bed at the same time and get up more or less at the same time. And the weekends should not be hugely different, because you can't really bank sleep. So if your kid goes to bed at 9:30 to get up for a school bus at, say, 6 o'clock, then on the weekends they shouldn't be sleeping till 2 in the afternoon, because what it does is just screw up their sleep for the whole week. They will fight you on this, but as much as possible, parents want to hold the line, because it's really, really helpful for managing mood and anxiety, by the way, not just depression. But I agree with you, Joanne.
Actually, for any kid that has migraine or headache, kids that have migraines, migraine brains really love routine and certain set hours of sleep.
So Polly, from a parent's perspective, getting kids to eat right, sleep well, exercise. I mean, these are all things we know make a difference, but how do you get them to do that? Maybe it's if you've been on a couch for the last year and a half, do it with your laptop on your lap.
I do think kind of encouraging the good habits and not dwelling on any of the problem eating, but you gotta get, more healthy foods in. You have to eat more protein. You have to do more veggies and, and just trying to get them to build in the exercise time, go out, go for a walk, just get outside, just even being outside. Sometimes kids, they just like to be in a cave in their rooms, and it's really challenging. And I know the diet is a really huge tie into the mood as well. And I think the other thing for kids is, and families, is just to have like a family meeting at the beginning of the week, just so they know what to expect, what's coming for the week. It lets them prepare. And then also at back to school time in particular, I always try to give kids lots of choices. So there are things that they feel that they are in control of, because so much is going to be out of their control. So let them think about what they want to do as a reward at the end of the day. My son used to love to go get a glass of fresh orange juice at a little store after the end of his start of middle school days. And it just helped him, get through the day sometimes. Little things really make a big difference, I think.
I agree. And I'm thinking about what other strategies have you shared with kids, clients, whatever, about calming yourself down, those struggles when you're worried or all that. There are little strategies.
There's a ton. I mean, I could start with deep breathing exercises, like learning to breathe, very slowly and very deeply from the diaphragm, from your belly button. So if you're lying down it's hard to do this when I'm sitting in a chair and on Zoom, but if you put a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly button and you're lying on your back and you're breathing through your nose and you make a whistle mouth, it's your belly that should rise and fall. And you want to breathe very slowly, like a breath every 4 to 7 seconds. Everybody's different. There's no right or wrong there, but it's very rhythmic and very slow. And kids can learn to, you could start teaching your kids that now. There's plenty of exercises online. I can recommend the Calm app, CALM, Calm, and Headspace. And they also teach breathing, not Headspace, but Calm teaches breathing. And you can teach your kids that now, because when they're in school, nobody knows you're doing it. So kids, if they're anxious in math class about being called on, they could sit there and just start some slow breathing. And it's not going to cure the fact that they don't know the math problem, but what it does is keep the anxiety at a manageable level. So that's one. The other is to make a playlist. I love kids, high school and middle school kids love music. So they can make a playlist of songs that they find very soothing or very relaxing, or alternatively, music that brings them up. Like I think of Manic Monday. When Manic Monday comes on Monday mornings, that energizes me, right? So you make a playlist and you don't listen to it except for when you really need it. And then you lie down, you do the breathing, and you put that music on. And usually within 10 to 20 minutes, people start to feel sort of more centered and more relaxed. So those are two that I can think of. I've got tons, but I'm going to let
Oh,
others.
that's helpful. Joanne, did you have one you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I want to share along with the breathing that one of the things I think that's really important as we learn the breathing is for kids to understand the science of it.
Mhm.
And sometimes I call breathing, along with all these other tools, as Carol was saying, there's tons of them. So as a parent, if you feel like certain things are not working, don't feel like this doesn't work for me, or I can't do this, or there are tons of different skills and there are many, many ways to individualize them. So getting back to the breathing, when we breathe in that slow, rhythmic manner, it signals, it triggers a stimulation of the vagus nerve that goes to the brain and then goes down directly to your nervous system, to this little part of our nervous system that floods our body with calm. So I tell kids it's a superpower. This is really a superpower. If you can get into your body and take that part of you that's all fired up and get it to calm down, you got it made. So, and just like you said, Carol, it's not necessarily going to go away, but if you can get it down a little bit, kids know that if I could even just get it down a little bit, I could probably handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say to parents, you got to kind of practice. It's a practice. You really have to do it yourself as well. As soon as your kid starts getting fired up, for you to say to yourself, downshift. I've got to downshift. Like a car, I'm going to put it, downshift it, and get my own energy level lower so I can have patience, because your kids are going to be high level, and then it's not going to go from here to there. It's going to go high level, then it's going to diminish a little bit more, and then it's going to diminish a little bit more. So it takes patience to stay with them as you're doing that breathing.
And I think that's huge, because I think parents forget that kids really cue off of them. So if parents are modeling, relaxation or a logical approach to things or a sense of calm, It's
Mhm.
just very, very positive for the child, right? Mom thinks I can handle this, then I can handle this. But
I
if
think
mom
that's
is hysterical and running around the house, or dad, by the way, I don't mean to put it on moms, it kind of communicates that there's a problem. So if moms and dads can remain calm, it's super helpful.
And it's hard during these times of COVID because everyone's feeling it. It's not just a kid issue, it's a parent issue, it's a kid, it's impacting everyone. So it is good for parents to check in on that as well. I feel like kids are going to hit the ground running in school. Yvonne, what can they do with some of these techniques on campus? I mean, they're in school, they start their day out. Is there any talk at the school level of giving kids more, I don't know, breathing time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be a wonderful idea. I think that starting the day with that, even if the school doesn't designate a specific time for that, I think it's really important for the family to set the time too, just starting the day on the right foot. I mean, one of my favorite things is the five senses grounding technique, because I also really like doing it outside. Your outside environment changes a little bit, but you think about, five things that you can see, four things that you can feel, and then you have the time to think about the textures, and then you go through these different senses. And I think what's really effective about it is that you're really in the moment. You're not scrolling on your phone. You're not thinking about what happened in an hour at school. You're thinking about just that very present moment. And that mindfulness is kind of hard to achieve. And so, yeah, I think the strategies that Carol and Joanne both provided are things that can be done in school. Um, I think that starting the day and ending the day tend to be my two favorite times to really implement it. So it becomes routine though, because like we just said, it really does require practice. And so putting it as part of the daily routine, I think that makes it the most effective.
Mhm.
I would add to the breathing some other body steps. So I use these four steps to getting your body regulated or calming. They're very kind of simplistic, but it helps when you think of only four things to do. So first is the breathing. The second is dropping your shoulders and letting your arms get like spaghetti or gummy worms or something. And your face and head, melting your face and head like it's the ice cream on top of a cone. So just imagine the muscles melting because we carry a lot of pressure and tension in our head. And then allowing each kid to come up with a word or an image or a phrase that they want to tell themselves. Sometimes I say to kids, depending on who the child is, to say to your anxiety, you're not the boss of me, right? You don't get to be the boss of me. Or just to use the word calm as you're breathing, or, one of my kids uses the husa, that's what she says to herself, whatever word kind of signifies to them, or whatever phrase signifies, stepping away from the anxiety and taking more control in my body. Usually once the body response is down, your thinking opens up and your ability to create options and think is improved. But if not, if to calm your mind down, sometimes I do a technique called rainbow breathing, which is as you're breathing, with each breath you think of a color. So your mind has to focus on the rainbow, focus on something outside of yourself, and it gets your mind active on thinking about something, taking away from the things that you're worried about, and can, settle down.
What I like about what you're all saying is it has an age range of, what's appropriate for different developmental stages, what's good for little kids, middle school, high school. You can make it age appropriate, whatever it is. But the basis being mindful, developing a routine, um, being able to identify their stressors. Those are all helpful.
I think it's also important to remind kids. I just had this conversation with a couple of kids this week, of their strengths, of how they've coped so far. So it was hugely helpful to a couple of kids when they were talking about school and COVID and having to wear masks again. And I reminded them, you know how to do this. We did it for a whole year. You know how to do this. Yes, this is really unpleasant and none of us want to do this again, but we can do it. And somehow it's helpful to just remind yourself of that. And then to build in, as other people have pointed out, different treats or rewards at the end of a day or the end of a long week, because this is so hard. I mean, and it's in some ways very depriving because we just, we lose our freedom and we lose the ability to do what we would normally do. One other thing I just wanted to suggest about anxiety, if your kid comes home in a panic or really having a meltdown, another really helpful thing that's quick and easy is to have them go into the bathroom, turn on the really cold water or fill the basin with ice and have them either use a washcloth or splash icy water on their face. If they are sensory sensitive, and don't want to splash water on their face, have them sink their hands into the icy water, especially the wrists, because the really cold water resets, as Joanne was pointing out, the vagus nerve. And if they can keep their hands in the water for a couple of minutes, that will help calm them down.
Quick fix.
Quick fix, yeah.
And something maybe with cold running water you could do in school.
Yeah.
Take a bathroom break and
Yeah.
go into school. Yeah.
And it's one of those things, nobody needs to know you're doing it, like you can pretend you're washing your hands, but
Absolutely. Just having a kind of like a toolbox of just coping things they can do throughout the day, start the day, end the day. Yeah, absolutely.
Or I'm not sure if Calm and Headspace are still discounted. I know that in the beginning of COVID, they had offered it free. I don't know what the status is at the moment, but utilizing YouTube is also awesome. They have videos for square breathing and like other techniques for kids. I mean, the younger kids, they have, I think,
good idea.
Elmo or something. There's the belly breathing song or something, but nonetheless, YouTube is free and I think it's super accessible, just in case those apps might not be at this time.
Good idea. Yeah. I forget about YouTube actually.
Yeah, very, very helpful. And everybody's hooked up. They're all on their computers. They're all using their phones. So there's no.
But Denise, that's another suggestion.
I know.
Get your kids off their devices when they come home. Like make it a family rule for an hour when they come home, no devices.
Parents.
What's that? Oh, parents too. No, I absolutely. Yeah, screen time is addictive. I mean, I can get into just like losing time on scrolling and I don't even know what I'm scrolling, but it can be so helpful to go outside or just read a book or just sit in the kitchen and have a cup of tea without having any devices around at all.
A lot of families, and Polly, maybe you'd mention this too, a lot of families have discovered a lot of those things being everybody is home, rediscovering family walks or a family movie or different ways to be.
Yep. Yeah, it's really been the plus side. We've had a lot more family time and been able to do things that we probably would have struggled to find time to do before. The other thing I just wanted to get in is, and I think it's a great idea to go to school and see it and get to walk around, but also if you can try to meet any of the teachers or the guidance counselor, especially if it's a new school, and just to give them some insights, as to what the struggles might be, but also so that your child understands what the protocols are. If you are struggling, your first person to, my son had a hand signal to give to the teacher, so he didn't have to go up and talk to the teacher. He could just do a peace sign from the back of the classroom and the teacher would nod and he'd slip out the door and go find his guidance counselor. And if he couldn't find the guidance counselor, he knew to go to the health clinic where there's a social worker from Family and Children's Agency. So he kind of knew where his resources were if he felt things were getting out of control. And that was very helpful to him too. Not to say that he didn't violate the protocols once. He called me, on the phone once, and the school didn't even know where he was. He was out of the class. So I think like making sure they know you can't call me until you've done all these other steps, and your last one is to go to the front office and ask them to call me.
That's a really good suggestion, but for all the parents out there, I just want to point out that in most schools, you would need a 504 plan to have protocols in place, but a 504 plan is very easy to get. So if your child is really struggling in school and needs extra supports of any kind, extra time on tests, or support from a guidance counselor during a class time, or a chance to go see Yvonne, they can request a 504 meeting. And by law, the school district has to provide it, I believe, within 48 hours, but it's usually within a week. And the whole team comes together and you talk about how to help your child. And older teens should be encouraged to go to that meeting and talk about what would be helpful, like a hand signal. That's a great suggestion.
So on the heels of that, a lot of times I get questions from parents, when do I make accommodations? When do I let them stay home? Should I let them stay home sometimes? And so what you guys are both pointing out are these things that we make adjustments and they get help from other people to address things, rather than, giving accommodations or giving rewards, for doing something, or bribery to get into school, which actually in the end just reinforces the anxiety. Right. So while it's so difficult to get your child to do something sometimes when they're so frightened, and your heart goes out to them, we're hardwired to take care of them and want to keep them safe. But it will really reinforce the anxiety. And so, if you can continue to identify their strengths and what their skills are to get through the day. And then at the end of the day, along with, the treat, focus on the intrinsic reward. Focus on them for taking a moment and looking them right in the eye and saying, you did it. You did it. You did this. You can do this. You got through it, and let them develop a sense of self-mastery and know that they have competency to get through some hard things. That's going to travel with them a lot longer through their lives and make your life a little easier too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How do people usually organize at school, Yvonne, to get to see a counselor if they don't have a 504 or something like that? Schools are pretty scheduled. Everybody's got something every period. What do people do?
Yeah, I think, the staff prefers if a student comes during a free period or a lunch or something like that, as opposed to missing class. But it seems that the school is pretty flexible. For my office, and I'm sure for other teen talk counselors, I advocate for kids to just walk on in. So I think that's really helpful when a student is in crisis. But of course, guidance counselors, because they have a lot of different roles to play, I think that they do need more of, a schedule and everything like that. And it seems like kids can just shoot an email and schedule it themselves. It's not really something that a parent even needs to get involved in right away. It seems that the kids really are on their emails, maybe even more accessible now to schedule an appointment, because they all have their Chromebooks and, they're on the computer in classes now. So it seems like it's been pretty quick to get an appointment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know it's probably easier to get an appointment in a school than it is outside of school. Any thoughts about people that feel that they need professional help? I know there's a lot of waiting lists and mental health providers are really busy. Any suggestions to bridge that gap or a wait?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I might start with your insurance company and calling your insurance company and seeing if they could provide a list of people that are within your network. But for example, I'm doing private practice on the side, and I joined a team that's all telehealth, and it's been convenient for me as a clinician, but I'm seeing people all over Connecticut and New York now. So I feel that because of the expansion with telehealth, and I am licensed in both states, just to, with the expansion of telehealth, I think it is helping people. I think we're crossing a little bit of that speed bump where it was really difficult to find somebody. And it feels like going on Psychology Today and looking at these different online platforms to find a therapist, I feel like it might be getting a little bit easier because of the expansion of telehealth, if people are willing to do telehealth.
Absolutely.
There are also, in the interim, there are lots and lots of webinars now and things, trainings online that you can do. parent trainings. I would really, for any parent that is really struggling and you can't find a practitioner, don't let that stop you. There are so many trainings that out of Yale, out of CHOP, that in Philadelphia, that may be some places that could offer you assistance where you could at least do some educational type things that would help you not feel so helpless in the meantime.
I agree. Any thoughts, a topic, a piece of this that you didn't get a chance to say that you want to cover in terms of identifying issues or tips or thoughts about it that we didn't get to?
I think something that was just on my mind in terms of integrating back to school is the idea that I think Polly and Carol both brought up, which is the ability to go into the school and see the building. And if that wasn't an option, I wonder if there would be a map online or something that the school could provide that they could do a visual walkthrough if they weren't able to do it in person. Something like that could be helpful. And then I guess just the behaviors, I guess, to look out for. We touched on that a little bit, and I know Carol walked through all of these symptoms of depression that I think are really, really helpful to look out for. But I would say that irritability is a big one that for anxiety and procrastination and stuff like that. I think something that I hear a lot in the school is my parents just tell me to get it done. Just do it. What's the problem? What's holding you back? And so I guess just being aware of that maybe it isn't just about just doing it, but they might be procrastinating for another reason. And so kind of it's not just they're being sassy back or something like that. There might be another thing there, and maybe that other thing would be a leading cause to go for that 504 plan. Maybe there's something there. And so I guess just being aware of those types of things we might see that might look avoidant, but maybe it's not.
And I think some parents are feeling like, oh, you're getting back to school, you're seeing your friends again. This should all be a good thing. And I think some of the kids have shared, I know that we've talked to, that they've been out of practice. They haven't been with their friends as much as they used to be. Their friend group may have changed or looks different, or maybe they don't feel as accepted. Any thoughts about that? The stressors of getting social again?
Well, I was going to bring that up. I was going to bring up after school activities also. So I think, one of the things I've noticed is that kids especially the kids who are on Zoom all year, have really lost the ability to do the social repartee, that sort of give and take, learn how to handle a joke or accept a compliment or walk up to a group and get involved in the conversation, like how to enter a conversation. So, and I think, everybody will catch up. So that's my other big thing. I hear my kids lost time. They've lost a year and a half. The whole world lost a year. So I want parents to calm down about that. But I think it can be hugely helpful to find an activity that your child is naturally good at, whether it's swimming or tennis or building Legos, it doesn't matter, but a social activity outside of school that's fun for your child, not work, like some sports are a job, they're not really, play, but where your child can sort of start to learn to socialize and feel more relaxed in a non-academic setting, I think can be hugely helpful without overscheduling them. I think many kids in Fairfield County are overscheduled, but I think if a kid finds something they're good at and they enjoy and they're socializing with other kids, it's hugely helpful in school.
Mm-hmm. One parent is commenting that they found it helpful to let their kids know that they're not alone, that this is happening all over the world, not even just in your own town, that this is something everyone is experiencing, that it's not just to them.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to acknowledge in terms of COVID, to acknowledge, there are some things we don't know. And there are, it's true, we do have some worries and concerns, but that what they can rely on is when their parents are going to be listening and talking about it and guided by the professionals. And when they have information that will help them, or, they're going to teach them and they're going to help them. So sometimes I give the visual of two concentric circles. So on the inside of the circle is all the things we can control. We can wear a mask, you can wash your hands, you can be a little bit distant, all the things that we can control. And on the outside of the circle is all the things we can't control and all the questions we have that don't have answers yet. And there's a lot of them right now. There's a lot of them. And so when we find ourselves anxious, it's likely we're in the outside circle and we're asking ourselves all kinds of questions that there are really no answers to. And so sometimes coming into that, the perception of, well, what's my inside circle and who's in my inside circle that I can rely on and that is safe for me, just gives the perception of feeling a little more safe in the midst of things being,
I totally agree with you. And I also think parents, especially with younger kids, elementary school age kids, could really titrate the news, like don't have the news on all day and don't talk about it at the dinner table, because the world is not an easy place to be living in right now. And that creates a lot of anxiety for young children. So I really encourage parents to watch the news consumption at home.
And that outside circle you described, Joanne, it is changing every day.
Every day.
One day we're masked, one day we're not, one day we're booster, one day we're not. It's overwhelming for adults. So you imagine if the kids are hearing that on the news or hearing it at the dinner table, they're going to integrate that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very helpful. Thank you. I just wanted to go over just those last, parting tips of starting a routine. You can't start any, now it's the end of the summer. I would think right now, getting a routine in place for the start of the school year, you could start creating those now and thinking about them, getting up, going to bed, eating, exercise, whatever those routines are going to be, and thinking about those after school activities to relieve some stress. And visiting the school and the 5 senses techniques and breathing, all these tools in your tool basket, I think is really important. And that I love those 3 columns, Joanne, of anxiety, thoughts, facts, and validation, and new healthy ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Any other parting tips?
I just want to say, in terms of kids in crisis, since I am on the program committee, that we are working to provide some parent trainings and parent education, and we are here as a resource to parents, 24/7. If we don't provide the services, we certainly can help you, with where to go. And if there are, the program committee is always interested in what's going on in the community. So for parents who have any particular needs or concerns, we're happy to hear them and see if we can develop some things in the community that might be supportive.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Carol, you might want to mention the anxiety back to school presentation Project Resilience is doing next week.
Yeah, so Ridgefield is actually having a very similar program on Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. We have 9 panelists actually, and anybody is welcome to join us. You have to join through the Ridgefield Public Library. And the title of the program is When Returning to School is Anything But Normal, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's free, of course. So by all means, join us if you want more information.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think most communities are trying to do something. Everybody's worried about this transition back and trying to give parents and kids tips to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Holly, were you going to say something?
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
My cat is speaking up here, so I'm muting.
And we're doing something similar next week, actually, with Lighthouse, with Reed. And we don't have a link yet, I don't think, but maybe that's something that Denise, you'll be able to see, or I'll forward to you, and we'll make sure to get the word out on that as well.
Yes, that and the focus of that, Yvonne, is for the Lighthouse program.
Yes, well, it's talking about anxiety going back to school and everything, but there is a focus to help people in the LGBTQ plus community, specifically maybe different challenges that they face during the pandemic, isolation, and community.
Absolutely. So directed. Yes, that'll be on our website. So any information that you need, or if anybody has any other questions after this, please don't hesitate to call our helpline and visit the Kids in Crisis website. I'm going to put up a resource list that you'll see. Katie, if you could share your screen. There's some basic resources just that people can take away today, but everyone that's registered today will get a copy of this sent to them. But we also have a lot of resources on our website, so please don't hesitate. And all the programs we're talking about that are coming in the next week or so will be listed on our website as well. Okay. Well, thank you all very, very much. I appreciate everybody participating. Thanks everybody that joined in today. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to give us a call or check our website.